So today I want to talk about how I'm having to relearn how to talk like a normal person and not like a Bitcoin maximalist. That's one side of the conversation. The other side of the conversation I want to have today is how I'm pretty much completely done trying to orange pill people. Now, I've talked about both of these issues or both of these ideas a lot on this channel. And if you're new, my name's Brad. I paid off $174,000 worth of debt in 2.5 years. Shortly thereafter, I discovered Bitcoin as well as the FIRE movement. And my wife and I are currently working on how to more deeply incorporate Bitcoin into our daily personal finances. So basically, on the Bitcoin-Maxi side of things, I am a Bitcoin-Maxi. Like, I totally believe that it's better money. Basically my wife and I have staked our, financial future, on Bitcoin and Bitcoin, derived financial products. So Bitcoin-Maxis, I'm right there with you. But the problem is that, we all still live in a fiat world. So even as we've sort of staked, we've planted our stake in the ground when it comes to Bitcoin and sort of like build our net worth and things of that nature, we, increasingly have, kind of run up against this brick wall of like, well, okay, cool. We want to denominate everything in Bitcoin and we want to live on a Bitcoin standard, but we still live in this Bitcoin world. So that's kind of actively what we're sort of working through. I mean, that's just, the fact of the matter. So I think the people that I'm really talking to on this channel, and it doesn't mean that other people aren't invited, but the people that I'm really talking to on this channel are probably like millennials to Gen X, somewhere in that, like 30 to 55 year old age range, that are probably Bitcoiners and are, you've been stacking, you've been hodling for years. And you've kind of gotten to this point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to start taking advantage of some of the gains that I've gotten, which is precisely where my wife and I are. So I'm super happy that we've taken this journey of, when I went through the debt elimination phase, like I had to learn how to do the stuff that I didn't know how to do. I had to learn how to organize, budget, expense track, all that stuff. And I did that to an extreme level of diligence that we still do even to this day. And it has paid off huge dividends. Now, one of the sort of undercurrents that has sustained us throughout this process of, going, kind of really grabbing onto the FIRE movement, really investing in Bitcoin, and also I would say minimalism. So we've been, I would say, physical minimalists and financial minimalists for years. So when I went back into corporate America, I talked about this in my video yesterday. When I went back into corporate America, we made the determination that we were going to try to save and invest $1 million over the course of 10 years. So I went back in 2015, so this was a couple years after I had discovered Bitcoin, and we were in the middle of like really devouring a lot of the FIRE movement stuff. I was reading Jacob Lund Fisker's Early Retirement Extreme book, which is great. It's a little crazy and even a little bit extreme for us. I had read Vicki Robbins' Your Money or Your Life. So we were working ourselves into a degree of extreme adaptability. And so, like I said, when I went back into corporate America in 2015, the goal was to try to stay for 10 years and save and invest at least 10K. Like I shared yesterday, I didn't make it. 5 years was about all I could take. I actually wound up changing companies 4 different times during that 5 years. As I continued to, I was in corporate software sales, so I continued to build my resume. I continued to be recruited by better and better opportunities. So, my whole attitude was like, well, hey man, I'm going to take advantage of absolutely everything I possibly can. And the reason that we walked down that road toward, toward financial independence was not for the retire early piece of it. I don't know that I will ever retire. I always see myself doing some sort of coaching and consulting. I have private clients now. I definitely see that, going into the future as long as I can talk, as long as I can jump on a call and talk to people. I think our motivation was freedom. So financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, freedom from sort of the tyranny of being in, corporate America and just sort of the reign that they had over my schedule, over my headspace. I just remember, I had PTSD by the last year of those 5 years that I got out. And it was just very difficult to even fathom thinking of, I just have another 5 years to go and we're free. And so we only got about halfway to that goal during that time. But it allowed me to kind of jump off that and jump into my financial coaching, consulting, sort of practice that I've built since then. I have a lot of stuff to say about that, especially if you're thinking about, trying to do an online business. But so we learned adaptability. Our goal was freedom. And then, throughout this whole time, I've expressed this in other videos. I was having a really hard time merging my financial independence vocabulary with my Bitcoin vocabulary. I was having a really hard time even addressing that with clients, that I knew Bitcoin was going to be, an amazing investment or savings vehicle for them. And I think that for many, many years, it wasn't that I didn't believe in Bitcoin. I just felt that sneaking sort of like alienation anytime you bring it up in conversations. I still think that there's a huge piece of that. And so I was very much kind of allowed myself to be victimized by the tribalism. And so I was kind of like, in this part of my life, my secret life, I was kind of a Bitcoin maximalist, but as a financial coach, I was still very, very hesitant to even talk about it with my clients, even up until, very recently, except for in a few outlier cases. So I think tribalism is a problem. I think definitely in the Bitcoin-Maxi space, I think that we tend to use vocabulary, we tend to use language that, the rest of the world doesn't use. So this is part of what I'm trying to do with this channel, is I'm trying to redevelop my vocabulary to be inclusive of traditional financial instruments like the ETFs and the covered call ETFs and the preferred stocks, like what Strategy is putting out. And so it's led us to this place of, just reevaluating everything. So I watched this video yesterday, and, sometimes you just consume a piece of content that's like, that's been kind of rattling around in the back of my head. And this guy, is articulating this perfectly. I've been trying to share Bitcoin with people that I know and love, and like I said, clients to some degree for the past 12 years since I really discovered and started kind of aping into Bitcoin. And I watched a video by this guy, British Hodl, and I don't like everything that he has to say. I think that he probably uses like way more profanity than I'm comfortable with. But his point was very, very well taken. So he's like walking around Zug, Switzerland, which is kind of a mountain town on a lake in Switzerland. Beautiful, beautiful place. And he's talking about retail. He's talking about the people that I've been talking to, even in the early stages of this channel, that were kind of Dave Ramsey's office, like Dave Ramsey's audience, rather. People that you're trying to get to understand, like, okay, you got to get serious about your money, you got to get out of debt, you got to get on a budget, track expenses, all of that stuff. But there's this stupor that I think is just kind of hangs over most of middle class America. And so that's what I say when I mean retail. And one of the things that he was talking about that really resonated was, retail's not here in this Bitcoin cycle. We're all sort of metabolizing this price dip, and it's not fun and all of those things. But he's saying that, when you go to Google Trends and you look up anything having to do with Bitcoin, Google searches are not there, not like they were back in previous cycles, like 2017, for example. And one of the things that he said was that, this is really retail's last possibility of getting any appreciable amount of Bitcoin at a decent price. The sad thing is that it's going to have to go to 500,000 or $1 million before retail will, take notice of it. And not to say that it'll be too late by then, but it's basically to say that you would be so much better off if you bought this dip. So all that to say, it just really clicked in my head. It's like, I'm kind of done. I'm done with the Bitcoin evangelization or evangelism as I've kind of come to understand it and tried to deploy it myself over the years. And so my wife and I are in this, sort of posture of just reevaluating everything. So we've been very, very strict about our finances. We've been very, very strict about debt and not buying a house and all those things. And so we're reevaluating. So some of the things that we're working on right now, one is, we're buying more of these covered call ETFs. Like BTCI is the one that we're in right now. And I'll be doing a video in a few days just with an update once they release what their dividend or their distribution payout is going to be. So we're reevaluating that. I'm starting to include, the traditional financial products like the ETFs and the covered call ETFs and some of these other products into my Bitcoin vocabulary. And then we actively want to buy a house. We're looking to leverage our Bitcoin against that. So we're looking in a couple of different markets right now that have much more reasonable prices, and we're looking at debt very differently. I'm trying to get out of the Dave Ramsey realm, I guess, for the simple explanation, get more into the Robert Kiyosaki realm of how the wealthy use debt. And that's not to say that we're going to put ourselves at risk. We would always be in a position to pay down all of the debt, whatever we wind up taking out, with our assets if we felt like we needed to do that. Another thing that I'm going to be doing, which I've never done on this channel, and I think it's something that I regret, is that I have not shared my faith and how my walk with the Lord has informed and continues to inform every single thing that I do. So that's something that I'm going to be sharing a lot more here very soon. So sharing my faith. And then the last thing that I'll say is that we're sort of on a journey right now, and I think that a lot of you guys that are sort of watching this channel, a lot of you guys that are attending to Brian Harrington's content as well, you're probably in that, somewhere between 100,000 and 500K, maybe $1 million in net worth, and you want to take things to that next level, And so that's the direction that my wife and I are kind of heading, is like we want to get to that 5 million in assets, over the course of the next decade. Now, that's not our idol. It's not, something that we're striving at all costs to do, but that's sort of the goal, generally speaking. And then we're also going to incorporate not just Bitcoin and not just gold and silver, but also fiat. Fiat is actually going to play a role in the calculation of that number, because what we've realized in this particular downturn is that we're a little bit lighter on cash, a little bit lighter on fiat than we're actually comfortable with. It's not a problem. It's not going to be a problem, of course, Lord willing. But these are sort of the things that are kind of rattling around in my head. So would love it if I would love to talk to you guys. So the goal of my channel right now is to create a community of like-minded people, Bitcoiners that are trying to move past toxic maximalism and incorporate, the tradfi stuff into their portfolio, and really just kind of take things to the next level. So community, and then obviously one-to-one conversations. If you want to book a call with me one-to-one, I have a link in the video description below. And, if you're getting value out of this, I would love it, obviously, if you subscribe to the channel, share, all of that stuff. And I'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.